Welcome to Academy Live. We are excited to have Zach Paulson, Director of Product and Strategy from ABM Technology Group, back on Academy Live today. Zach has some great information to share about powering growth through partnership. So let's say hi to Chris and Zach. Come on the show.
Zach,
Hey,
great to see you again. Welcome back. It's good to have you on the show again. How are you doing?
great, Chris. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to be back.
Good to have you.
Well, we're jumping right into things today because you've got some slides to show us all about partnerships. So we're going to let you take it away.
Thanks much. Appreciate it. So today, my goal is to talk to you about powering growth through partnerships. Company I had, True IT, went on an interesting journey through some acquisitions and change of business models, and discovered a partnership model I'd love to share with you today. So let's dive right into it. So the backstory is, ran a company called True IT, an MSP in the Midwest, and one day we got an opportunity to buy a Dynamics company, and we were just thinking, how hard could it be? The good news is we live to tell about it, but we have some more stories I'd like to share. Before we get started, a little bit about me. Who am I, right? I'm just an average guy. Honestly, I'm a college dropout. Didn't end up finishing college, so I guess that's par for the course in an IT company. Also non-technical. When my now business partners hired me, I actually didn't even know how to merge a cell in Excel. Turned out to be a strength, but early on it was looking like it was going to be a challenge. I've just always loved sales, loved retail. I've been kind of a gadget guy, and back in 2000, right around that 2000 2002 mark, I was just an aspiring Best Buy store leader. I realized once I dropped out of college and loved tech gadgets, was big into car audio. I didn't need to have a degree to eventually one day run a store. So my thoughts were, as I was going to go ahead and run a store someday. That did not work out. Actually, what happened was I ended up meeting these IT nerds in 2004. I say that term endearingly, but IT nerds that had a small IT company, and let's dive right into it. So now I've been 20 years in the IT business. I started with a break fix IT company in sales in 2004. Actually, fun fact, my business partners hired me for $7.69 an hour with an opportunity for commission. I guess it worked out. But in that time frame, I also started a car audio company in 2004. And where that came from is I realized in an IT organization, the distributors we used also were the same distributors that car audio used. So my brother and I, always being passionate about car stereos, dove into that business as well. So I kind of ran that business on the side while working for these guys in the IT company. I did eventually sell out of that in 2010. But in the meantime, I became an owner in the IT business that I was working for in 2009. My business partners were gracious enough when we reached kind of a certain point in the organization. We were about 13 people, about $1 million in revenue. I approached them and said, "Hey guys, I'd love to be part of this organization," and they graciously let me become a business partner in 2009. In that time frame, one of the things we discovered along that way is that as an IT company, we were just starting to get into the managed service model. And so managed services obviously had monthly recurring revenue. You had these monthly invoices that came out for the managed bills, and then you needed to pay them. The clients needed to pay them. Well, we were typical IT guys. We didn't like talking money. We didn't like collecting checks. We liked the end result, but we didn't like going through the work of doing that. And so we started a little company. Actually, it was just software at first, and it turned into Connect Booster. So my business partners were the original code writers for Connect Booster, and I also helped on the sales side of things. And we launched that in 2010. What Connect Booster was is it was essentially a way to take those recurring invoices for managed IT, bill clients for them, and then reconcile those within QuickBooks when they got paid. It was pretty innovative in 2010, and we started out partnered up with a payment processing company and launched that business in that year. We went through some turmoil during that time frame. We actually merged and unmerged our original IT business into another IT business. That business happened to be located in a different city. And so our thoughts were, we were about $1 million company. They were about a $2 million company. So obviously, fuzzy math applies here. We thought we'd be a $5 million company bringing our organizations together. Well, unfortunately, this is one of my first lessons in culture. It did not work at all. The two businesses came together. They were oil and water. There were 3 business partners on our side, 3 business partners on their side, and unfortunately, we never came together. It just became sides on the whole thing. And finally, in 2011, we found ourselves faced with most of the customers we brought in had left. We also were running into a situation where our culture was toxic, revenues were in the tank. We were less than the combined revenues of the 2 organizations by a long shot and losing money. So at the end of 2011, I believe it was about September, we kind of got half kicked, half left out of the company and found ourselves going, what are we going to do? What's our next move? And so we spent a lot of late nights, a lot of time discussing the perfect business model. And with that in mind, we founded a company called True IT in 2012. We were literally trying to create True IT. About that time, True IT was growing really well. First 2 years were fantastic, and we found ourselves really having to make a choice. Do we continue down the path of True IT, which was growing really well, it was experiencing great growth, or do we continue with this Connect Booster piece as well? And we had to make a decision, so we ended up talking to the company that owned the payment processing portion of Connect Booster, BNG, and we sold to them in 2014. They've since had a fantastic, successful exit with Kaseya, so I'm very proud of what they've done as well with that organization. Bouncing back to True IT, I did become CEO of that company in 2015. My business partners and I had gotten to a point where a little bit of a change of leadership, and they kind of focused in on the different pieces of our business, and we began to hit the ground running again and grew that to $3 million in revenue in 2017. So 2017 was kind of our breakout year, really. Everything was going well. We had achieved all the success that we were aiming at. And so we decided that was the year we were going to make some acquisitions. And so the first 2 acquisitions were MSPs. We acquired those in 2018. But then next slide, we actually acquired a Dynamics company. And many of you are probably wondering, like, Dynamics, really? That was our thought too. So the theory here is there was this company called Summit Group Software, and we were very cloud focused as an IT company. True IT had kind of launched as a managed services only company, which in 2012 was pretty unique. We also we were very cloud focused. A fun fact about True IT: we had never installed an Exchange server. We had done Microsoft 365 since the day it was launched, and we actually know that the original name of Microsoft 365 was BPOS, or Business Productivity Office Suite. Boy, I'm glad they changed that name. That's a terrible name. But nowadays, that's grown to be Microsoft 365, and just about everybody uses it. So we knew the cloud was going to be something. We were also taking early steps into Azure. We were selling Azure before Microsoft had a way for MSPs to sell Azure in a monthly consumption model. So we figured out a way to work with Microsoft, and we started selling Azure. We started deploying a lot of M365. And we found that the Dynamics companies that were local here really wanted help with both of those products. Microsoft Dynamics GP was actually birthed in North Dakota. Our former governor was the CEO of that company. So you'll find a large concentration of Dynamics companies in Fargo, North Dakota. That's where we were based. And so one of those Dynamics companies, Summit Group Software, was a client of ours, as well as several other Dynamics companies. And we were working with them. We'd been their MSP. We'd done projects for their clients, with their clients. And one day they came to us and they said, "Hey, we're going to sell the company, so we need your help. We gotta get the data off. We've got to start working on splitting everything out." And we dove into it. We were starting to help them. And then when they went to sell, the sale fell through. And I'll never forget that moment. I remember reaching out to their CEO, and his name was Eric, and I said, "Eric, what are you going to do?" And Eric said, "I don't really know. We're all pretty surprised. This wasn't the way we expected it." And I had a thought. I just said, "Well, what if we bought you?" Many of the Dynamics customers were a prime target for MSPs. They were usually sub 100. Sometimes they were larger, but many of them were sub 100 employees. Managed services was perfect for those organizations because they had little to no internal IT. So managed services was a good fit. So I thought, well, why don't we buy you? We'll then cross-sell into the clients that are already consuming services on the Dynamics side, and it should be a match made in heaven. So we did that in 2018, and all of a sudden we became part of the Dynamics consultancy. So on the next slide, we'll talk through kind of what the results were that. Well, realistically, it nearly bankrupted the company. When we bought it, it was slightly distressed. There was no consistent sales channel or pipeline. The consulting business is a lot of feast or famine. So what would happen is you get these big projects, you'd complete a lot of the work, and then that work would taper off, and now you'd have to go find your next project to work on. So we almost bankrupted the company in 2020, and it was quite a challenge as we were trying to build this business into a viable business. We are also in the process of buying out a business partner. And if you remember right, something else kind of major happened in 2019, 2020. COVID was going on in this time frame as well. So we were facing a lot of headwinds and a lot of challenges. But if we move on to the next slide, I can show you kind of what started to happen. So we became known as the Dynamics guys in the industry. It's not very common for MSPs to do Dynamics. You find a lot of MSPs are either pure play MSP, or they have a business like a value added reseller connected to them, or some sort of cloud consultancy. But oftentimes you find that software development and software consulting are not part of them. So we started to see quickly, as our business from 2018 to 2020 was suffering pretty heavily financially, we started to realize that MSPs should not make this move. It's very much a unique business. It's not at all like the MSP world, but there's a few pieces that cross over. There's a few areas that make sense for MSPs and Dynamics to work together. They just shouldn't do it on their own. The end result is it essentially could kill them, and it's super expensive. We did a kind of a little analysis, and if you're going to go ahead and start a Dynamics consultancy, you're going to need a minimum of 5 specialized Dynamics resources just to get started. Well, let's just do some easy math. That's like $500,000 in payroll in 1 year before you've turned your first bit of revenue. Probably not a gamble most organizations are willing to make. On the next slide, we can kind of dive in to see where did this go. And so what happened is as we were doing Dynamics and trying to figure out the sales channel, TrueIT was fairly well known within the MSP space. We went to a lot of conferences. We knew a lot of other people. We were in peer groups. We were constantly reaching out and talking to other organizations. And as we were working with these other MSPs and they'd found out we bought a Dynamics practice, occasionally they would come up to us and say, "Hey, I've got a client that needs Microsoft Dynamics. Could you help them with this project? It's either accounting related or it was CRM related." And we said, "Absolutely, we'd be happy to help you." And because we were their friends, because we had seen them many times in the industry, it was just a common thing to just take on a project for them. And of course, they knew we weren't going to compete with them. We weren't going to take their business. But that started to give us an idea. And so on the next slide, we can dive into what happened. And so the Dynamics question that popped in our head was, what if we became that Dynamics company for the MSP channel? And so we began to plan to become an MSP channel source for Dynamics opportunities. In 2021, we completed it. We fully spun out the Dynamics business, and then we became a MSP channel centric company in 2022 and rebranded as True North Dynamics. On our next slide, probably one of my proudest moments is actually in 2025. This year, we've actually entered the Pax8 portal. So for those of you that are a Pax8 partner, you can now go into the Pax8 portal and you can purchase True North Dynamics and actually work with us on your Dynamics project. So that's kind of the origin story, if you will, about how a simple MSP like TrueIT, just an average MSP like every other one out there, all of a sudden makes an acquisition and just kind of finds themselves in a spot going, what have we done, to now have spun out to a point where this is completely available to the channel. And with that in mind, it really helped us understand that there are places and opportunities in the MSP world that maybe sometimes an MSP shouldn't go, but maybe they should explore other partnerships and look for ways that they can work with a company that has mastered that challenge and is good in that, but instead of actually diving in and becoming something you're not, using a partner that's already got that experience. So that's how True North came out of TrueIT. Funny story, when we were rebranding, I remember we were working on what are we going to call this thing? What do we call True North Dynamics, or what do we call this Summit Group software? And my only rule was, because we were TrueIT and because our clients were going to be other MSPs, I wanted to make sure we were non-competitive. I wanted to make sure that people didn't feel nervous about working with us. I didn't want them to think, this MSP is going to take our business if we work with them on the dynamic side. It was the furthest from the truth, and you can write anything you want into a contract, but we really wanted to give people the confidence. So I had one rule. I went to them and I said, whatever you do for branding, just make sure true is not in the name. And so we ended up with True North Dynamics. But it was such a good name, we couldn't resist. We're from the north. We're up here in Fargo, North Dakota, and True North is probably the would be the guiding light for organizations going down the Dynamics route. So with that, happy to take some questions and maybe dive into a little bit more about that story.
Yeah, Zach, I think I loved your slide where you're talking all about all the different changes you've had in your company going back and forth and have you sold and you this merged and then you unmerged and all these different routes that you've taken. I know there's so much talk from partners and MSPs around how do I acquire or how do I get acquired? And so if there's a partner, if there's a MSP that's thinking about one of those two questions, what
Mhm.
do you recommend they start with of either becoming more attractive to be acquired or if you're trying to find a company to acquire, what would you recommend?
Yeah, I think the biggest recommendation I would recommend is starting with what is your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? Is this a land and expand? Are you trying to land grab and expand your territory? Are you trying to get into something you don't have the expertise? Really looking at that goal is going to determine a lot. I'd love to say I did that in all our other acquisitions. Some of those are just opportunistic and I paid the price for them. And then other ones turned out to be accidents were some of the greatest outcomes, right? We ended up the dynamics thing, we just thought how hard could it be, and we were completely naive. But I think the goal is trying to somehow take the clients that they had and make them clients for the MSP, and then vice versa, cross selling that. So really, beginning with the goal. Are you ever ready to sell? I don't know. I'm not really sure. If you're retiring and riding off into the sunset, maybe it's an easier choice. But if you're staying with the organization like I planned on doing, or several of the places we worked with planned on doing, that can be a totally different outcome too. So starting with your goals, I know it's a wishy-washy answer, but it really is the most important.
Well, I think one of the things that connected us was the start with why thing, right? That's one of
Yeah.
our very first when we'd met and had conversations, and I loved kind of that focus that you've had on, well, why? What's the outcome? What are you looking to do? The question I have is, what is the role of your relationships and all the relationships you've built? What role has that played in your resilience and response to all the ups and downs and challenges of your business?
Yeah, it was huge. So one of the things about the MSP community that I just absolutely love is that there is a strong community. And if you shoulder into it and you're willing to share and to be vulnerable with your peers out there, they're willing to share and be vulnerable back. And so when we were going through some of the toughest times, there were relationships that we had, whether it be with Pax8 was a huge one for us, as well as just MSP peers that are out there in Texas or Kentucky or wherever they happen to be. We would come to these conferences and we could bear life's burdens together and share what was going on. I would say if you enter the arena thinking that you're just at a conference with a bunch of competitors, you're never going to get out of it of what you would get if you went to a conference and believed you were around a bunch of collaborators. And that's whether they're on the vendor side of it or on the MSP side of it.
Yeah, well put.
Awesome. Well, let's hear more about this partnerships and the directions that you're going. That'll be
Yeah.
really helpful.
Happy to. So one of the things that I hope you get out of this is what the value of partnerships are. So the first question everybody has to ask, of course, is, well, why partner versus do it myself? Well, here's the thing. This community, I started in this community back in 2012 is really kind of when I entered the foray of going to conferences and meeting other MSPs. There are many MSPs over the last 13 years that have developed great products and services that I, as an MSP, didn't create. And so when we start to dive into all the things that are out there, Why recreate the wheel? A lot of times we go through the same challenges of launching products and services when somebody's already done it, and we could just partner alongside of them and make sure that our end client gets the same results. That's a big point. Number two, I guess, is give clients what they want without having to be an expert in an area or take on a new product line. I'll pick on Dynamics. No MSP should do that unless you have, for some reason, a background in software consulting. It is an incredibly painful arena to jump into, but you've got clients. In fact, when we did our analysis, we figured that in a typical MSP, a $3 million MSP has around 50 clients, 50 to 70, and that number can vary based on the size. But generally speaking, only 1 to 5 of them actually qualify to run a Dynamics product. Dynamics is expensive. So your larger clients, it makes perfect sense. Your smaller clients are never going to go down that pathway. And so why in the world would you develop all this expertise so literally 10% or less of your clients could do it? And then the last part is if you develop your own solution, and chances are, if you've been an MSP in the game for a while, you've attempted to do this, and maybe you've succeeded, but then you've also probably had some failures that you and I could commiserate about. But you can find out that this is costly and it takes a long time. None of it comes out of the gate being perfect. And even though we've done it a couple different times between Connect Booster and True North Dynamics, it's painful, and it can oftentimes suck up a lot more energy and time and money than you'd expect. On the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about finding the best partner, or being best way to find a partner. So the first thing is what we did is we basically said, what are the products and services that our clients are asking for, our clients are needing, but we don't deliver. So a great example today, our MSP does not do cabling. And I don't know in the future if we will ever do cabling. If we do, it would probably be through an acquisition. It probably wouldn't be something we would do on our own. So there's a great example of services that we don't deliver, but our clients need, that we have to figure out. So in that direction, we've chosen to partner. The other thing I would say is check out the vendor shows. I'm going to give an example in a little bit here, talking about some of the vendors that have emerged as an MSP created a tool for themselves or an integration for themselves that turned out being something that was resellable. And then, is there a major challenge only an MSP can understand? So what I would say is, if you're looking at a certain tool, sometimes the only way that tool is going to work is if it's used by the category of industry that it is. And that some of the best tools out there are tools that other MSPs have created and put to use, and now we use them today. Switch to the next slide, please. So things to consider. So one of the things I would throw out there is, how many tools and services do you use today that came from MSPs building it for themselves? Well, one of the ones I'm very intimately aware of was Connect Booster. Like I said, we didn't like collecting money. We needed a way to have it automatically connect money or collect money, and we built Connect Booster. IT Glue was born out of an IT company that needed documentation figured out. Pia was born out of an MSP that looked to start automating some processes, and then eventually was able to roll it out to multiple organizations. BrightGauge, another one where dashboarding came into play, and the list goes on and on and on. And we see that a lot. So as we move to the next slide here, as we think about it, could MSPs partner with us? So if you're thinking, okay, so you've already got some areas of gaps in your business that maybe you need to fill with a partnership, how about things you do that's unique to you that another MSP could partner with? I know we've partnered with several MSPs since we've launched the organization. And what you do is you basically just evaluate the business and what special products and services you have. Is there something you do that is very unique that you haven't seen other MSPs do that you think maybe is something you could offer? And then, is there a market beyond your MSP? If you took what you were doing, could you put this in another MSP? One thing I will say is, if you can't find value in it, chances are an MSP wouldn't find value either. We found it incredibly helpful to be eating our own dog food, using the software and consulting we created, because if we couldn't figure out the value, chances are we weren't going to go ahead and sell it to somebody. And then lastly, I would say the accidents can be your greatest opportunity. Bessie, you asked that question of hey, what advice would you give when you're looking to acquire or be acquired? Truthfully, sometimes the accidents are the greatest opportunity. Now, I wouldn't employ that as a strategy of let's figure out which accidents I can get myself into. But I would say that I've always said opportunities are not hard to find. It's being ready and able to take those opportunities on that is the
Mhm.
challenge in life. So, next slide. So going to market, this is probably the piece I would warn any MSP looking at. If you are thinking you want to go to market with the MSP channel, I'm very proud and excited to see what we have done with True North and taken it to the MSP channel, where pretty much every sale comes through an MSP partner. But I will say the hardest part is marketing and sales. It takes a lot of money and effort to build or make each product market worthy. Just because you can deploy it doesn't mean that it's easily repeatable. And that's one of the biggest challenges that we ran into, is that you need to make sure that it's commercially viable. It's boxed. You know, back in the day we used to have boxed copies. You essentially have to make the closest to a boxed copy as you can with any product that you create. People aren't going to tolerate a cumbersome integration process. They're not going to tolerate a cumbersome onboarding. It needs to be something that looks like you've done it before. And for us, the way we did that is we actually just worked through some of our friends in the channel first. They were the most merciful in allowing it to be a little more cumbersome. They also didn't really know anything about the organization, or the product we were offering. So they were a little more willing to kind of put up with the clunkiness of going through it. It probably didn't seem as clunky to them as it did to us, but it's definitely something you got to consider when going to market. Last slide. So here's the best way to develop a channel. So one of the things that I would recommend is channel events. So we pretty much literally launched True North through MSP channel events, and we found specifically the CRN events, things like Beyond coming up, were great events to get the word out. When you can go to those events and you get a captive audience of MSPs that are coming there on purpose to learn about new opportunities, it was a great time. You can email market, you can direct call, you can do all these other things, but the events were the highest payout. Really, we all get inundated with emails. We all get calls all day long. And are we probably looking to pick up a vendor based on a call or an email? Likely not. But when we go to these events, we're already geared up to look at other vendors. And so that's where we found that, yes, they were expensive, but the amount of leads that they produced were the best. And that's if you're deciding to go down the channel route. You might be doing something different. You might be doing something that's more broad-based market. But for us, our audience was definitely the MSP world. The other thing I would say is, if your friends in the MSP world won't buy it, it's probably not sellable to other MSPs. We found that our friends were deliberately seeking us out for this. So that worked out really well. But the last thing I'll say, though, is that once it becomes a viable concern, we found it really helpful to spin it out and make sure that it was not a competitor. There is a real thing to consider, that if you're an MSP today and you're going to create an MSP focused product, you eventually, somebody's going to say, well, what if you steal my customers? Because you are what we are, and I'm giving you customer data. In our case, they were giving us some of their best customers, because the largest ones were the ones using Dynamics. So that's what motivated us to spin that out and make it a separate company. I literally have no access to the customer data today because we took that strong of approach spinning out those organizations. So that's a little bit about what I've learned over the years. I hope it was helpful. I love this community and I love to give back. So if there's any way that I can help you take your organization to the channel, whether it's a product you have in mind or a service you offer, I'm available for questions. Please feel free to reach out. There's a whole different story of where we sold True IT to a printer copier company called Advanced Business Methods. That's where I'm at today, helping them take IT to their print customers. So that's a different story down the road, Bessie, but that's where I'm at. Feel free to reach out to Zach Paulson at abmnow.com or give me a call anytime.
I know. I'm definitely going to try to find you at Beyond and ask you those questions. So I really want to thank you for coming, Zach, and being on the show. I know you're a two-time guest, but we'd love to have you. So maybe you'll come back for a third time one day. So thank you so much, Zach. And next up, we're going to take a look at Sales Pitch with Keith Marciano. So let's take a look.
Baseball season is upon us. Woohoo! Baseball teams are preparing for that long baseball season with the goal of reaching the World Series. The season is a marathon, not a sprint. The goal for a baseball team is to focus on the fundamentals each and every day in order to achieve their goals. For MSPs, we must focus on the daily consistencies in growing our business to reach our sales goals, to reach the World Series of profitability and growth every year. Let's touch all the bases on how our MSP can win our World Series. 1. Growth goals. Set month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year growth goals. Best in class numbers is 20% year over year new managed service business, while achieving 40% overall gross margin percentage or more. If you're under $1 million annually, create a goal to double your new managed services business year over year. That will get you on the right path. 2. Fundamentals. Swing the bat, meaning consistently prospect in front of your prospects. Go to associations in your target industries. Have events, webinars, public speaking that will attract your ideal clients to you. Doesn't matter if you're a salesperson or if you're the owner of the business. 3. Build your network. Find people who will vouch for you and will introduce you to people that they know that you want to do business with. Find your tribe and meet with them frequently to discuss helping each other grow your businesses. 4. Take breaks. Unlike baseball, there is no off season for growing your business. You need to take breaks. Unplug. Take a vacation. Do a date night with your spouse. Recharge your batteries. This is a must, especially for you owners out there. Your goal is to build a championship team, a company where year over year you win. This takes consistency and oftentimes a relentless effort to focus on growth. A full pipeline cures all ills. You've heard me say that before. Now, go create a plan, execute upon it, and we'll see you in the Fall Classic every year.
Play ball!
Thank you, Keith, for that great sales pitch. And thank you so much to our guest, Zach Paulson. Make sure to check us out on May 6th when our guest will be Jaime Gonzalez talking all about cyber insurance for MSPs. You will not want to miss it. Remember, we're live every other Tuesday at 2 p.m. Mountain Time, and we're on demand always. So don't forget to subscribe and like us on our YouTube channel. Thanks so much. Bye.